Hey, my name is Russel Brunson, and today I wanted to tell you a story about my very first mentor online. You may or may not have heard of him. His name is Mark Joyner. And it's funny because I got started online about 15 years ago, before Facebook, before MySpace, before most of the things that we're used to, that we use to grow companies online today. And I remember I was getting on and trying to figure stuff out, and I tried a whole bunch of things that didn't work. And at the time, I kept hearing this person's name over and over and over again. He's been referred to nowadays as the godfather of internet marketing. And the reason why is because he was inventing all these ideas and these concepts, and he kept doing them. He was the person who created the very first ebook, and he launched it out there. He created ad tracking before that was a thing. The first pixel was something that he did. And I remember hearing these stories about this guy, and I was like, I got to figure out, how can I meet him? How can I understand what he knows? But back then it was different. There was no social media to contact people. And about that time, he was actually exiting his internet marketing training company. And he put up for sale this thing, he called it the farewell package. And it was basically, I think it was the 20 CDs of him interviewing people he'd worked with throughout the time, throughout his career and a whole bunch of other things. And he was selling this for $1,000. And I remember at the time, I didn't have a job. My wife was working. I was wrestling. I didn't have $1,000. I remember watching this launch and watching every single day as people were buying the course, and it was getting more and more closer to being sold out. And finally, towards the end, I begged my wife. I was like, I don't know why, but I know that if I had the information inside of Mark's mind, in my mind, we could figure this whole game out. And she said, okay, I trust you. You should go for it. And so I spent $1,000 we didn't have, bought the farewell package. And I remember getting it in the mail and holding it. And it was all these CDs. And I was like, this is the key to my future. I have to understand what he knows. I need to understand it. So I started listening to this as I would drive around town, as I would go on wrestling tournaments, I'd be listening to Mark. And it was so cool because I was hearing all these war stories, what they had done. I remember listening to the interview with him and Joe Vitale when they invented the first ebook, when Mark came to Joe and said, I want to take your book and turn it into an ebook. And Joe's like, no one's going to buy an ebook. He's like, no, it's going to happen. And he launches this ebook, makes a ton of money before Amazon even figured it out, right? Telling stories about how they did viral marketing, how he launched a website that started growing virally, that got up to one of the top highest visited websites in the world in a very short window of time. I learned thing after thing. He was talking about sales funnels before we even called them sales funnels. Before anyone had ever seen it or thought about it, Mark was doing it. I remember I was sitting there, driving to these wrestling tournaments, listening to him on these CDs over and over and over again, and it really became the foundation for my knowledge. I think today a lot of people see what we do with ClickFunnels and they're like, wow, Russell figured out funnels, Russell figured out these things, and the honest truth of it is Mark figured it out a decade before I ever did. I learned from him initially, and then for a long time we were trying to replicate what he did. I remember looking at his funnels, looking at his pages, and modeling him. He had this manuscript back in the day called the Confidential Internet Marketing Intelligent Manuscript. That was basically all the split tests that he had figured out that worked. I remember I would read that thing like it was the Bible, and Mark said, okay, you need to have a checkbox on your order form that's not pre-checked. And I was like, okay, everyone on our forms has to have that. He said, I tested this headline color, I tested this, and everything he said, I modeled it to a T because Mark had proven those things had worked. And all of our early funnels looked almost identical to what he was doing because we knew it worked. And a lot of the foundational concepts that we have inside of ClickFunnels today, how we structure order forms, how we do pages, how we do things, are all things I learned from Mark a decade and a half ago. And so if you haven't had a chance to meet Mark yet, if you haven't had a chance to learn from him, he is probably one of the first pioneers of online marketing. He's been called the godfather of internet marketing, and there's a reason why. So many things that we use today, the tracking pixel, split testing, ad tracking, ebooks for crying out loud, all these things were things that he invented before anyone else even thought about it. So if you have a chance to learn from him and plug into his mind, he was my very first mentor. He's continuing to be a mentor to this day, and I hope you have a chance to be mentored by him as well.